Hey Sham, how's it going?
Going good, man. Pranav, how's it going?
Going well, going well. Feeling a little bit underproductive, I would say. I wish, so we are recording this on a Sunday, and I'm having this feeling that I could have accomplished a little bit more in this week. But I think we'll never be quite happy with what has been accomplished. So. Uh,
That's true. But if any of the listeners of this episode, right, takes back a lot of value from it and ends up changing their life, then this week will actually be very instrumental in changing their life. So listeners, it's up to you to ensure that Pranav feels a little less guilty for this week. Okay, like it's on your
Yeah,
shoulders.
yeah. Thanks for unburdening me and putting all the burden on the listener. So,
Yeah.
yeah. What's so a random question? Before we hit the recording, you said that you don't quite take tea or coffee. So how do you get your creative juices flowing? Like, what is that thing which what is the right word? Which kind of jolts you into work and gives you that energy. How do you do that?
Oh, interesting, interesting. I think two things. Typically, if there's nothing else like around me which is like distracting me, I tend to work better. Like when there's more focus, right? So it's not two things. It's actually one thing. That is the thing where I just try to optimize for my focus. So I have this habit of working in what I call deep work, which is a term that Cal Newport has
Yeah.
coined, right? You're also a big fan of deep work, right? So I just ensure I get myself into deep work, for which I have a routine, and that routine keeps changing, like maybe twice a year or so, just to keep things like interesting. But once I'm in that zone, I just take like 5 to 10 minutes to get in that zone. I'll keep water near myself. I will take a look at my high level strategy, which is something I do every time before I get into
Mm.
work. So when I do all this, suddenly I am kind of in the zone. It's hard to explain because it doesn't sound anything like having tea or coffee, but it really gets me in the zone, almost like a meditative effect, where I'm leaving everything else behind and I'm getting sucked into this world of having to do whatever it is I need to do, like from a work standpoint. Like slowly I'm getting sucked into that. So that is what I do instead of tea or coffee, which might be a simpler solution for most
That's
folks.
awesome that you don't have to depend on anything external to get into that state.
Yeah.
Cool. So can't think of a clever segue here. So let me just like in the like jump into the topic right away, which is audience building. But I think a better way to coin today's topic would be two aspects, and I agree with you. I don't think the right title for this episode should be two ways to build an audience, because there are multiple ways to build an audience, honestly. But it's this is more of two aspects to consider while building an audience. And this is something that you and I have spoken about a lot. And yeah, I think we just both of us just feel that this is something that would be interesting to a creator who is on on this path of building his or her audience. And so the intention or the goal here, I think, would be to help this creator think about his audience building. What are the factors that he needs to consider in both of these approaches that we are going to talk about, and then see what kind of audience building approach works for him. So I think that is what we will be covering today.
Yes, and what I love about these two aspects of audience building is that it's a very big picture level
Yeah.
understanding, right? And you introduced me to this idea. So, like most folks, I think I was only focused on one aspect. which is say funnels, and we'll of course get more into that. But when you introduce the other angle, it is something that we know as marketers we should do, but we do not make it a point to remember to do it, or we do not make it a part of our daily marketing or our marketing strategy. Like we do not make it tangible enough to actually follow through on it. So that is what I loved about our discussions regarding these two aspects, is that once we understand it and once we connect it to our actual marketing strategy, it ensures that the second aspect is also not forgotten completely, which is arguably the more important one.
Yeah. I think one of the challenges that the listener might have as they listen to this is that, we are going to talk in terms of a couple of mental models. So just imagining that, we do not have a PPT in place. And of course, when you're listening to a podcast, you can't see anything. So I think what I'll just suggest to the listener is like, stay with us and try to visualize what we are trying to build, the kind of a mental model that we're trying to build. And of course, you can re-listen to the podcast again if any of it is unclear. So this is just like a side note before we actually jump in. So
So Pranav, you want to define both the different aspects?
Yeah, sure. So the conventional way, or I'm not sure if I can use the word conventional. Let's just say that the way which is a little obvious, or the way which we kind of know more than the other is what I call the vertical way of building an audience, and the other way which we will talk about is more of a horizontal way of building an audience. So let me start with the vertical one. Let me just define that, and then we'll obviously move to the horizontal one. All right. So imagine that there is a square, and in that square you have the words written Facebook ad. Now that square has an arrow. So imagine an arrow being drawn from that square which points downwards. So you have a square which says Facebook ads, an arrow pointing downwards, and this arrow points basically to another square which has landing page written in it. And then there's another arrow, downward arrow from the landing page square, which points to an email series. And maybe you can stop here. So just imagine that there are 3 boxes. All of them are vertically placed, which means that there is Facebook ads pointing to a landing page, pointing to an email sequence. And the reason we are stopping here is, because we are considering emails as, let's say, a metric, or maybe email as a way in which we can, say that, okay, this is what audience building means in this particular regard, that if I get an email ID, then my audience is getting built. So that's like, the vertical way of building an audience. So what does that actually mean in practice? So basically it means that if I want to get more email subscribers in my email list, one of the ways in which I can do this is by using Facebook ads. I will run a Facebook ad. I'll get those people to click on the ad and come to my landing page. Probably give them some incentive to sign up. And when they sign up, they enter my email list, after which they will perhaps start getting my email sequence. Now, the block of Facebook ads. So this is, we're talking about paid. I mean, Facebook ads is definitely a paid initiative. The same vertical funnel that we just spoke about can be also replaced by something that is organic. So even if you replace a Facebook ad with a blog or with a podcast, everything else remains the same. So let's say if there is a blog, there is a search term that you put out on Google, which lands you on this particular blog. There is again a call to action, let's say, which takes you to a landing page, or maybe there is just a lead. There is a lead form there which collects your emails, right? So that is how maybe it will work in the case of a blog. Or it could be a podcast as well, that let's say if you are a fan of a particular person, of a particular, let's say, marketer, you go to your podcast engine, let's say you go to Spotify and you search for that particular person's name, and because you want to just listen to the podcast where he has appeared as a guest. So you land up on a particular podcast which you have never heard of before, but now you get to know about that particular podcast, and maybe then you search for that podcast or you subscribe to that podcast, and then you sign up for their email newsletter and so on and so forth. So what I'm trying to get at is that the Facebook ads part of it, or the whole the 2-3 steps that I mentioned. So I started off with the Facebook ads landing page and then the emails, but all of those are replaceable paths. The point being that the journey here is linear, it's vertical. We are going from one box to the other box to the other box, right? So this is what I would say is a vertical way of building an audience. And yeah, before I go ahead, let me know if visually I was able to paint that picture, or was it just a little too abstract.
Yeah, I think visually it made sense, and I think most folks refer to it as a funnel, right? So there are multiple steps. In your example, in the first one you started off with Facebook ads, and the second one you started off with more organic, with more of an organic source like a blog. But either way, when we look at it vertically, and which is how most digital marketers, including myself in the beginning, which is probably the only way we look at a customer's journey, we look at it only as the starting point or whatever, like to build awareness wherever they land on, whatever platform we're getting them from. Then the next platform, like next touch point, like either it will be a landing page or whatever, the next touch point, and finally the outcome, which is the email list or wherever you're building your audience, right? So it's a step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 sort of a thing, and it's like a funnel, because there'll be more people at step 1 and slightly lesser in step 2, slightly lesser step 3, slightly lesser in step 4. So that's the funnel. So that's the vertical element. Yeah.
So I think before we go to the other way of doing things, I think we should talk about the pros and cons of this particular way of doing things. I mean, is there actually a way to look at the second? Is there actually a need to look at the second aspect? I think let's establish that first. So according to me, I think, for the sake of simplicity, just not to confuse the user, we'll leave out the organic part aside for a minute. Okay, let's just consider this very simple funnel, which is, let's say that I want to build an audience and I am going to use a paid mechanism for that. So my customer journey or my funnel looks like Facebook ads, which goes to a landing page where I collect email IDs, after which I send them an automated email sequence. Okay, let's talk about that particular funnel. The main problem, or perhaps the most significant problem that I see with this approach is that it's totally dependent. It's a linear approach, which means that if I put in the money, I'm going to get a certain result. So if I put in X dollars, I'm going to get Y results or Y leads. If I put X plus $8, I'm going to get Y plus B. So basically, how much ever I put, the output is going to be defined by that. So I have to keep on refueling my vehicle. I have to keep on putting in money so that the top of the funnel is always active. It's always grabbing more and more people into my sphere of influence, or into my email list. And once that stops, the email list building stops, which I think is a problem, because you can only reach out to a certain set of an audience. You can only spend a certain amount of budget. And if what you're creating is inherently not, that does not have the capacity to spread by its own merit, or if that is inherently not remarkable by itself, then you are going to have to depend on these, or you're going to have to constantly, refuel your engine, which may not be ideal for your creator business.
Yeah, I think well said about you needing to continuously fuel this vertical funnel. I think the pros are also very similar to what you mentioned. Like some of the things you mentioned, I think also shed some light into what the pros are, which is the fact that I think it gives marketers a sense of control. Okay, if I put in X dollars, I will get Y dollars back, right? You get that idea after running ads for a while. And in business, which is inherently such an uncertain thing, and marketing is inherently uncertain, such control is a wonderful thing, like to an extent, right? So I think that's one of the pros. Of course, the con being that you have to continuously keep refueling it. But at every step of the way, the marketer knows that, like from step 1 to step 2, I'll have, say, 50% of people going from my step 1 to step 2. So step 2 to step 3, say, like historically, I've had 10% people sign up or whatever. So I know that I should put in this many dollars so I can get this output. So which is probably why most businesses do satisfy themselves by doing this well. And as long as there are no shocks to the business, this can often work fine also for many, many years. You keep pushing you keep feeding in dollars at the top of the funnel. Dollars dollars can be either in form of ads, or it can be in the form of a team of writers who are writing blogs for you, creating content. So it could be either way. But something needs to be invested at the top, and that gives you a certain amount of predictable results. So I think that predictability is a good thing that makes a lot of marketers happy.
Also, I would add speed to predictability as well. So I write an article, and let's say I want that article to get me more. I want more visibility for that article. So when I put in the money, when I put in the dollars, that is accelerating the process of putting it in front of more and more people, which in turn helps me building my list, as we spoke about. So I think certainty / predictability, as you said, plus speed is something that would be a benefit of this particular approach.
Yes, good point. I think speed, and you also get a lot of data after going through a few cycles of this funnel. You get a lot of data into what is the average amount of time that a typical person will take. So again, another layer of predictability there also.
Do you want to start with the cons, or do you want me to jump in with the
cons of this vertical funnel? Yeah, I think it's more of an opportunity loss. So two things, and I'll start with the non-obvious one since I just mentioned it now. I think the non-obvious one is that is what we are leaving on the table by focusing excessively on the funnel, right? We create a vertical funnel and we forget that there is a qualitative aspect to this quantitative approach that is inherently this vertical funnel. Like if you're running a vertical funnel well, you obviously have to get into the numbers. Like if you want to do it well, you have to get into the numbers. You have to measure. So it becomes a sort of quantitative game. And suddenly, like invariably, you stop thinking about quality. You stop thinking about how much trust am I building, because that's not a measurable metric, right? What is measurable is how many people opened my landing page or how many people clicked that button, right? You cannot measure what people are feeling, right? So I think the problem with only focusing on the vertical funnel is that it takes away the qualitative aspect of very important things in business, like how much trust do I want to build? Is what I'm putting out there remarkable enough? Is it share worthy enough? Does it make the reader, will it make them look good if they share it with their friends, and so on? So if we start thinking along those lines, like we might be able to increase our influence or increase our reach to more and more people. So I think that's the first one, right? First con.
Yeah, I agree. By the way,
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Right. The second con, right now, I've totally forgotten the second.
Yeah, so
con.
I'll just build up on what you said. I think
Sure.
just to give you like a cliched example, right? I mean, most of the well-known brands that we know, it could be Facebook, it could be Harley Davidson, it could be Airbnb, it could be Google. Take any name, take Slack. You know, all of these brands we got to know not through a funnel, not through a customer journey, but we got to know about this brand because a friend told us. You know, Facebook and Google, for example, the biggest, you know, like the big giants of advertising, even they did not, you know, become what they are because of advertisements. There was no Facebook hoarding that you saw on the road, or there was no Facebook ad that you saw. What happened was that your friend told you that, hey, are you on Facebook? And you asked, okay, what does Facebook even mean? And then you created your profile, and that's how you got into it. So I think, as you correctly said, the whatever work that we are putting out as a part of our brand, is it even remarkable? Is it even good enough? Or is it spreading? Is it getting us people because of the merit of the content? Or is it getting us people just because we are, you know, putting it in front of so many people that eventually some of them would eventually anyway sign up? So that is definitely one drawback of this particular approach. So I completely agree with that.
Yes. And I guess the other cons are that if you keep playing this game, you are incentivized to get into the sleazy parts of marketing, like rely on clickbait or rely on exaggerated promises or false scarcity, which is like my pet peeve. I hate seeing countdown timers when I know that it's a false one, you know. False discounts, like $1,500 but cut to
$3.
$7, $3. And, you know, like the vertical funnel, if you're measuring it, it will tell you that you saw a bump in people when you're playing this trick. What it doesn't tell you is that a much larger portion of people could see through your trick and they think lesser of your brand. Right? That's not something that can be measured, because like there's no button there for people to express their dissatisfaction or talk about that, you know. So yeah, those are some other cons, I would say. Like, yeah, you end up in that measure game, and you're optimizing for those steps rather than for the business.
Exactly.
Overall.
Yeah. So which kind of, you know, takes us back to what we spoke in the previous episode about linear thinking versus systems thinking, that just because I'm getting more people, or let's say if I promote if I use a Facebook ad and if I use $1,000, and let's say if I got 100 people onto my email list, it does look like a victory to me. But for the business, if you zoom out, does that actually look like a victory or not is something that needs to be seen. You know, we are not quite sure if there is, you know, if that has added any tangible value to the business or not. So definitely one part of the metric or one part of the funnel, one metric of the funnel is going up, but is it improving overall as a system is still a question mark.
Exactly, yeah. And it might be a good thing also, but we need to ask that question.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And also I think, you know, I think it's a good time to say that, you know, both Shyam and we are definitely not against the usage of paid ads for sure. You know, I think it's just a tool. I mean, if you have listened to the previous episode, you know, about Tripwire funnels, we were pretty opinionated. You know, it was like a pretty binary thing, which was that, okay, don't use Tripwire funnels. But in this case, I would say that it's not as binary. You know, I just think that both of us sort of see the merit in paid ads. We just feel that the tool should be used responsibly. the path of paid ads should be used whenever applicable, whenever necessary, and we shouldn't excessively depend on it. Is the whole point, because there are people who are doing a great job in terms of using it well. And the best example I can think of is Andre Chaperon. He does use he may use a paid ad to get you into a funnel, but when he does that, he does not like start spamming you with promotional emails. He'll first add value, and then he will eventually make a pitch to you. So there are definitely better ways of using this approach for sure. So there is no right or wrong here, as far as paid ads are concerned, but just know the role that it's playing in your business. I think that's the point that both of us want to make.
Yes, in fact, I will go even one step ahead and say that it is absolutely critical to have a vertical funnel. So even though I've been speaking of the cons, it is just that we need to be aware of the cons. So the way, say, my thought process has evolved over the last few months, after discussing this idea with you of the horizontal lines, right, which we'll come to in a second. But I see it as, so I used to only think of vertical funnels as the only way. And now that I know the horizontal ways line, where I'm starting to think more of how to make the content or the product itself more remarkable, more talk worthy, more share worthy, right? It helps to solve a lot of the problems of a vertical funnel, but it does not mean that I'm doing away with vertical funnel. And these two aspects, I do not see them as exclusive
for sure.
at all. Like, it's not in this or that question here, as opposed to the previous episode of Tripwire, where we were talking about, okay, do we do a tripwire or do we not do a tripwire? That is like,
pretty
you can only
binary.
do one of those two things. But here, pretty binary there. Here, my understanding is that you need to do both. Like, both of them are so critical to the business. The vertical funnels give you that understanding. It gives you a sense of control. It gives you predictability that if my prospect is doing these things, they are probably at the awareness stage. If they're doing these things, they're probably more engaged. It gives us very good calculated guesses of what they are going through in their mind and how invested they are into like my content and my product, right? Or into my brand. So it gives good insights into that. But the danger is that if you look at only that, if you depend only on vertical funnel, then you'll miss out on a lot more things, and you'll miss out on very good things for the business at large, which might not necessarily be measurable.
Correct. Yes, definitely. I think measurable, not being doing things which are not measurable, I think was a great thing to add there, because the other way is a little less measurable, at least in the short run. So definitely that's a good point. And I think I'll just lastly add one point, which I think we may or may not have covered, which is that how do you actually gauge if whatever you are creating is spreading organically because of its merit? If you are, constantly, if you're depending on enhancing the top of the funnel, then you don't know if the brand, any asset of that brand, if it is spreading because you're adding more people, or does that content or does that brand in itself, is the brand in itself so remarkable that people are talking about it? So you can't quite gauge the quality of your work with just a vertical approach. Does that make sense?
True. Yes. At best, you can see better conversion rates or something, but then you never know if it is the product itself or if it's the content or if it is totally irrelevant things like the color of the button and I know theoretically you can A/B test these things out, but you can never isolate separate things. Like when you're running a business, you can never spend 2 months like just isolating one specific aspect and seeing if like my conversion rates have improved because of making something remarkable or because my product is great or anything. So yeah, I agree. It's very difficult to tell like how remarkable is my product, or like how share worthy are things, are people telling
their friends about
telling their friends about it. which are very, very important things for business. But sadly, it doesn't fit very well with the whole vertical funnel way of doing things.
And I think most of the marketing world is inclined towards the vertical funnel for sure. I would probably say 99% of the world, and I don't even think I would be exaggerating, because we are caught up in these matrix. You would, if you enter into a boardroom or a meeting room of where the marketing team has convened, and when they're discussing about the effectiveness of their marketing, they would be talking about clicks, and they would be talking about other metrics, but they wouldn't quite talk about how, if at all, the content was remarkable, if at all the content basically was share worthy. So that is definitely something. So this is what we have spoken so far, is something that 99% of the businesses are focusing on. And what we want to talk about right now or going ahead is something that only a few businesses have made an attempt to focus on. Yeah. So I think, without teasing this even further, what is the alternative, right? So we have spoken about a vertical funnel. Let's talk about the alternative. So let's change the example now. Let's say that you already have a podcast, which is and there is obviously a conventional vertical funnel for that. So at the top of the funnel, you have your podcast, which so again, there's a box which has podcast written over it, which then there is an arrow pointing downward from that box, which takes you to an email list. So the call to action that you typically give is, hey, join my email list, visit my website and join my email list. And then there is an email sequence. So this is like a organic, but still a vertical funnel that you have. All right. And, if you let's say do paid ads for your podcast, again, we are again talking about route one, where you are getting more people to listen to your podcast and you're getting more people into your email list, which is fine. You can totally do that. But how could you complement this particular approach with the horizontal approach that we are going to talk about in just a sec? So imagine this. Imagine, let's say, a series of concentric circles. So there is a circle within a circle within a circle within a circle. So let's say there are 4 to 5 such circles. In the innermost circle, you can just put in your diehard fans, people who are absolutely mesmerized by your brand. They're mesmerized. Let's stick to this example. Let's say there are people who are absolutely blown away by your podcast. They love your podcast so much, and they can't wait to tell their friends about it. Outside this innermost circle is a circle which consists of people who again like you. They may not be your diehard fans, but they still love you. They might have heard your name here and there. So your name keeps popping up in their head. They hear about you quite often. They are like one step away from being a diehard fan. Then the circle outside that would be, let's say, a set of people who just know you. They are maybe just acquaintances. They know you. They haven't consumed your content so much. They just know you. And then the circle outside is the circle of strangers, which would be, let's say, 99.99% of the people who have never quite heard of you. And the approach here is that rather than thinking of this, if you want to, grow your podcast, if you want to build an audience, which is what we're trying to do, right? Essentially, that's what we are trying to do here. Yes, vertical funnel is one way of doing it, but what if you could focus on this innermost circle? What if you could focus on these diehard fans and give them so much of value, or make the podcast in itself so remarkable that they tell their friends about it. So which means that the word will flow not linearly, not from one phase of the customer journey to another, but more through circles. So the innermost concentric circle will tell the circle, the set of people just outside that particular circle, and so on. So the idea here, just to conclude, the idea here is to create a podcast that is so amazing, that is so valuable, that is so remarkable, as Seth Godin would say it, that you can't wait to tell your friends about it, and the word will flow from the innermost circle to the circle outside that, to the circle outside that.
Right. So I'll just add something here, okay? Which was the very first apprehension I had, right? When you suggested this thing to me for the very first time, I honestly didn't get it. Probably even to the fifth time, I didn't honestly get it, right? It took a lot of time for me because it was a little too abstract, I think. So, say like my first thoughts were that, of course, my product has to be remarkable, right? My content has to be remarkable. I mean, why would people buy if it is not really remarkable, right? And apart from that, this is not a very tangible thing. Like, you have to make something high quality, you have to make something remarkable. We all know that. So it doesn't change what I have to do on a day-to-day basis, right? So that was what my initial, you can say, apprehensions were with this approach were. That ultimately at the end of the day, I'm still trying to create something that meets the audience needs, and I'm trying to do that as best as possible. So what's the point of seeing this as a separate thing altogether? And I think what changed for me was when I started asking questions that if I were to focus completely on this, then what would it look like? And of course, these questions, they were triggered by some episodes that I'd seen. I think one in particular, the podcast episode where Seth Godin comes on, Everyone Hates Marketers, Louis Grenier's podcast. That was just so useful. I think it just triggered something where I realized that once you start asking yourself the question, right, that what can I do to make it more remarkable, right? You can make it, you can even break it down to a few parameters. And of course, this is not measurable. This is not a quantitative metric by any means, right? It is very challenging to measure. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't try to. Just because you won't get a perfect metric, it doesn't mean that you don't have to try at all. It's not an all or nothing game, right? Very few things in life are an all or nothing game, right? Common fallacy there anyway, like psychological fallacy. But here, when I moved past that fallacy, that it's not an all or nothing game, let me try and figure out what exactly I can do. Then I started seeking out more ideas, like in the form of books. I started kind of brainstorming with myself, etc. I'll just pull out something I have here. These are some of my, like, I didn't make notes for this specifically, this episode specifically, but this is for my business, that I've written some notes down on overall shareability, what makes it a brilliant choice for the super fan, and some of the answers are like, they could get a transformative experience that they wouldn't get otherwise. They gain confidence that they can lose weight. Like, I'm in fitness, so they gain confidence that they can lose weight, like that belief change. The point here being that I am breaking down what remarkability means for my business into slightly more tangible things, like the confidence, the belief change that they can do it whenever they want in life, or they're getting a transformative experience, a belief change once they're reading these things, or the satisfaction of being able to just go out and eat ice cream without feeling guilt, for example, right? I'm trying to break it down into tangible thing. And some of the other questions that I've come up with are like, how does it speak to their soul? How can I elicit a response where my audience says that, yes, this is exactly my problem, Shyam. You're getting it better than even I could articulate it myself, right? Or other things like it helps them challenge the traditional way of doing things. So in my case, that is dieting. In your case, it will be marketing, right? So it helps them challenge the traditional way of dieting, or in through this podcast, we are hoping that we can help you challenge the traditional way of marketing. Like, we are showing you what the status quo is, and we are showing you a better vantage point or a better perspective also, right? So yeah, essentially, I just realized that when I made the effort to make this intangible thing or this vague concept into something that is more definable or more tangible, right, it became easier for me, or the importance dawned on me even more, that I wouldn't have done this if I didn't focus on the concentric circles, or what we also call the horizontal lines, right? if I hadn't focused on that as a concept, I would not have asked myself these questions. I would have just told myself that, okay, our product has to be good. Everybody knows that. Like all marketers know that. All business people know that the product has to satisfy the needs of the customer. It has to delight the customer. But we never get deep into what that actually means. You know, and these are just my initial thoughts. Some examples that I gave now, they're just my initial thoughts. If you want, you can get even deeper into what that would look like in terms of actions. Maybe even create some metrics which might not be perfect, but you could still have some imperfect metrics, like, you know, how many people is the average person sharing with, might be imperfect ways to tracking that, etc. But all these are exercises, I think, which need to be done, which we don't spend time, like marketers do not spend time talking about these things. We do not spend time thinking about how can I make something more shareable, you know, how can I gain the trust? How can I have my customers hear about my business from somebody they trust, right? These are very important questions, which I think we just don't focus on because they're not as easy to measure, or they're not, they don't give fast results. I mean, there are many reasons, but we just don't look at this gold mine at all, you know. But I thought I'll just talk about my initial skepticism because I thought that realizing these things was important for me to truly accept this.
I think there is a difference between, I think we really need to understand the difference between good and remarkable, you know, because they are very, very different things. You know, good is something which is, you know, which you like, which, let's say, solves your problem. The mosquito repellent that I use at night, for example, is good. You know, it's doing the job for me. But does it excite me enough to tell Shyam about it is another question altogether. So there is definitely a difference between good and remarkable. And the challenge for the marketer here is that in this noisy world, you can't be satisfied with good. You know, you have to take that good and make it remarkable. You have to create so we're talking about, you know, typically the content bit here, right? So you have to create content which I, not only when I consume it, do I, you know, feel that value is added, but it is the, in the design or in the fabric of the content itself, there is this shareability factor that if I share this, I look smarter, I look cooler, I look more intelligent, and so on and so forth. So that is one change, you know, that we have to make as we look at this.
True, yeah. I think excellent point. The fact that customer acquisition costs are rising throughout the board just means that good has become quite expensive from a marketing standpoint, a cost of business standpoint. We need to aim for remarkable. It's not good enough that people are buying your product. We need to aim for remarkable. Now, what does that mean? It needn't be that, like, whatever you sell alone has to be remarkable. There are many different ways in which remarkability can be added. So I was just thinking of mosquito repellents. I think it's very unlikely that tomorrow, if you or I went into the mosquito repellent business, that we'd be able to invent something that is significantly better as such. But we could still do a remarkable job of, say, communicating the benefits of creating remarkable content around mosquitoes, helping people with mosquito-related problems like, say, dengue or whatever, how to avoid dengue, for example. If we are able to communicate that in a remarkable way that gets people talking, right? So it need not be, the remarkability need not be focused on the product. It need not be focused on the marketing. It need not be in both. It could be in either. It's totally up to your business and what it looks like. The more you can do it, the better, of course, but it could come in at different places.
And I kind of want to hammer on the point that it has got to be done intentionally. You know, it's not that you wait for it to happen organically, that, hey, you made something and then you're hoping and praying that it spreads. You have to, you know, sort of intentionally think of ways of making it remarkable. So the way, you know, so I think, you know, platforms like Slack or Facebook have an inherent network effect to them, so they have an advantage, right? Because if you are a team of 15 people working in a startup, and if 5 of the early adopters have signed in on Slack and they're interacting with each other and chatting with each other on Slack, then the other 10 people are going to be left out. And then when you feel left out, you obviously want to join in the platform, so you join Slack. So for platforms like Slack and Facebook, they have this added advantage of network effect, where there is inherently that remarkability. You are inherently, these guys are talking about it, which forces you to join that particular platform. For a creator business, which we are concerned about, you have to think of other ways of building remarkability, which is perhaps out of the scope for today as to how to actually build that remarkability. But the idea here is that you cannot just think linearly in terms of the funnel. You have to think of creating assets, creating content or creating a product which in itself also becomes remarkable and people talk to their friends about it. That is, I think, the punchline that we are hammering.
Yes,
I think
absolutely.
Yeah, sure. So I think we just as a concluding thing, we have to what could the entire journey look like, right? I mean, we have spoken about two separate things. We have spoken about, let's say, the vertical funnel, which is typically a linear journey. So let's stick to the podcast example. We spoke about, let's say, a podcast, which then points to an email list, and then let's say which points to an email sequence, and then maybe a product. And then we spoke about the concentric circles, right? We spoke about the diehard fans, and then people who love you, then people who like you, and then people who are your acquaintances, and then strangers, right? So how do we superimpose this? How do we superimpose one onto the other, or how do we get a complete picture? And so the way I and Sham think about it is simple. You basically keep the vertical funnel as it is. You don't quite get rid of it because you can't get rid of it. The vertical funnel stays as it is, but imagine that there are horizontal lines. So from a podcast, again, this is a little challenging to maybe explain. So would need your imagination here perhaps, or visualization skills. But there is a podcast box pointing to an email box pointing to, let's say, an email sequence box, whatever that is. Sorry, a podcast box pointing to a landing page box pointing to an email box, and all of these are vertically aligned. But at every stage, you have horizontal lines pointing outwards, which means that from your podcast, there is a horizontal line pointing outwards towards both left and right. Even your emails have a horizontal line pointing both towards left and right. Your landing page may or may not have those lines pointing towards left and right. The point being that at every stage, can you create an experience where you tell people about it, right? So if your podcast is remarkable in itself, if you like this podcast, and if you tell your friend that, hey, Pranav and Sham are doing this podcast, and then your friend subscribes to that podcast, it's not because he subscribed to a vertical funnel. He subscribed it because you told him about it, and that is the horizontal line that we are talking about. So the whole superimpose thing, if you take the vertical funnel and superimpose it with the concentric circles, this is how it would look like. Vertical lines as they are, but at every step there are horizontal lines pointing outwards, and those horizontal lines basically stand for word of mouth. Where the word of mouth is spreading at every stage, you're telling your friend about that particular asset that you're consuming.
Yes, absolutely. And I really love this visual. You introduced it to me for the first time, Pranav. So, and I loved it instantly because it's such a simple way to remember both, right? As a marketer, we have a big danger of getting sucked into the vertical funnel and forgetting about the word of mouth aspect. But when you think of it not as a vertical funnel, but as a vertical funnel with horizontal lines, then you remember that at each step, we want people to be recommending us to their friends or whoever they know. Right? We want that, and we want to make that easier for them. We want to make that a smoother experience, and we want to make whatever experience they're having at that stage, we want to make it more wow, more cool. and we also want to think about what they are gaining from sharing. Like, is it a gain in status? Do they look cooler? Do they look smarter? We can think about all these things. So just a simple act of like thinking of it as a funnel with horizontal lines ensures that I'm not going to forget about it. Now, when I think of my customer journey, I'm thinking like I can literally see lines going downwards as well as sideways also. So that ensures that I will give it a thought and be strategic about the word of mouth, creating that word of mouth going.
Yeah, I'm glad that helps. And again, I think, as a final call to action to everyone, it would just be that there are definitely cons to just overly depending on the vertical funnel. So do think deeply about how you can make your whole journey, make your content remarkable. Don't be overly dependent on the vertical funnel is the bottom line. And perhaps in the future episodes we can discuss about how you can actually be remarkable. But for now, at least, just having that intention that, okay, I need to make it remarkable, I think that's a good enough takeaway from today's episode.
Yep.
Cool. So I think that's a wrap.
Cool.
Thanks for making the time, Shyam.
Yeah, thanks, Pranav. Good talk. This is good discussion around this really key idea.
Yep. I'll talk to you soon. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Yes. Bye.